Hey everybody, Steve here in February of 2026, and you know how I love the old days, love talking about the old days, sharing memories from the old days, taking trips down memory lane. I know it's easy to romanticize the old days as being the good old days, but once you get a decade or two or three away from the old days, they tend to look a lot better than maybe they were at the time. I'm not saying the old days weren't better than today. I think they were in a lot of ways, but I do understand that it's easy to romanticize the old days as being so much better than today, or even just so much better than they actually were at the time. And the other day I was just thinking about things that I think are actually better today than they were back in the old days. So I thought I'd share 10 of those things that I happened to be thinking about the other day. When I was taking my walk, I was thinking about this. So the first thing that I think is much better today is telephones. You know, we had a telephone that you plugged into the wall back then, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and if you weren't home, you missed the call. And for most of the time when I was growing up, we didn't even have answering machines. So answering machines didn't come around, I think, until the 1970s. So before that, you wouldn't even know if anybody called you. So having a cell phone today that you can take with you and you can call anyone in an emergency, or they can call you any time of day, no matter where you happen to be, that's a million times better than what we had back in the day. Now we had, like if you broke down, if your car broke down on the freeway, we had call boxes. Who remembers call boxes? So there would be telephones on the freeway, on the side of the freeway, about, I don't know, was it every mile or so? So if you broke down, you could pick up the phone and call somebody for help. I think all the telephone call boxes have pretty much disappeared, haven't they? And of course, when you were out and about, we had payphones where you could pay to call. You could put in a dime or a quarter and call someone if you needed someone and you weren't at home. So we had a few different ways to call people in emergencies if we were away from the house, but nothing like today with cell phones. So I know all of these things that I'm going to mention today, almost all of them, I think they're a double-edged sword. They have positives and negatives associated with them. So I know a lot of people hate cell phones, and there have been a lot of bad things that have happened because of cell phones, but I think overall, when you weigh the pros and cons, I think cell phones definitely have improved our lives dramatically since when we were young. The second thing that I think really has improved life a lot is the internet. Growing up, we didn't have the internet. We had encyclopedias. Remember, almost every family had an encyclopedia, so you could open the book and look for information. But today, almost all information known to mankind from the beginning of time until now is in the palm of your hand, in your cell phone, or on your computer, on your laptop, which you can take anywhere with you, or on your desktop computer. So the internet has just changed life for baby boomers and all of us dramatically in a positive way. Again, there are negatives and positives to the internet, but overall, I think the internet has changed our lives dramatically for the better. And the internet didn't come around until the 1980s, and even then it was probably really the 1990s before it started becoming really popular, and then really just since 2000, the last 25, 26 years, that it's completely transformed the world. Now, I think with AI and other things, now I think it's going in a very negative direction, a very dark and scary direction, but at least until now, the internet has been a really great thing, and something we didn't have growing up. So number 3 ties into the internet, kind of, and that's streaming. Being able to stream any movie, TV show, music, anything you want that can be streamed now, you can stream it right on your phone. So you can just take it with you anywhere you happen to be in the world, any moment of the day. You can watch almost anything you want from your phone or your computer or your television. You can stream it. And that also goes for VCRs back in the 70s and 80s. That was when we were first able to start taping television shows and watch them later. When we were growing up, you pretty much just had to, whatever was on TV, you had to be there to watch it or you missed it. And most of the time, it never came back. I mean, some of the shows were really good and they would go into reruns years later, but for the most part, if you missed something, that was pretty much it. You just didn't get to see it. And so, or if you had to go to the bathroom during the middle of a show, you missed whatever part of the show was on while you were going to the bathroom. You couldn't pause it to go to the bathroom or to get something to eat or to answer the phone or whatever. So streaming and being able to record on a DVR first on a VCR, then on DVRs, to be able to record anything you want and watch it at a later date. That was just a game changer. That made life so much better. All of these things that I've mentioned so far have made life so much better. They all have their downsides, although I don't know if DVRs have a downside. I'm sure they probably do. Well, I guess when you're recording something now on your DVR, that's all being recorded. So your cable channels know everything that you're watching, and so that can have a downside if all of these big corporations collecting just unbelievable amounts of information about all of us, everything we do, everything we watch, everything we see, every website we go to. I mean, just everything is captured, and a lot of it is then sold to companies that want to use that information to sell us things or for some other nefarious reason. So yeah, there are pluses and minuses to all of these conveniences and things that make our life so much better today. So I guess number 4 would have to be social media. Again, it's changed our lives dramatically in a positive way and also in a negative way. But being able to connect with family members all over the world, to be able to find family members, long lost family members because of social media, to be able to share our lives with friends and family like we never were able to do back in the old days. Back in the old days, you would send a Christmas card and catch people up on what you were doing throughout the year. Well, now you can just post everything on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or wherever you want. There are dozens of places where you can post images and videos and text about your life, about your friends, about your family, about what you're doing, and share it with others, and to be able to connect with them in a way we never ever were able to stay in contact with friends and family back in the day. Now, on the other hand, back in the day, most of us all kind of lived in the same area. We lived pretty close to each other, so we were able to see each other face to face and meet up throughout the year, where once things changed, everyone just kind of scattered, and families and friends moved all over the country, all over the world. It was so much cheaper and easier to do that. They all started losing touch with each other, and the bonds and the fabric that held us all together just sort of disintegrated. So that was a really awful thing. And it came because life was so much more convenient. It was so much easier to move and to change jobs and to fly anywhere in the world, and very affordably. So it changed our lives dramatically. But social media came then to fill in the gap and to give us a way to stay in contact like we never were able to do before, and then to leave those memories as well for future generations if we wanted to do that. Actually, talking about that made me think of something that wasn't on my list. So number 5 would be travel. When I was growing up, I don't know, I think I was probably 10 years old before taking a plane somewhere, before flying somewhere in an airplane was even a possibility. That just didn't really happen. No one that I knew flew, and I think it was mid-1960s when my grandmother took me and a couple of my brothers to Hawaii. That was my first time on an airplane, and at the time, I remember it was really, really a special thing. No one I had ever known, friends, family, anybody, had ever flown in an airplane. This was mid-60s, and you just didn't hear about people taking vacations, flying somewhere, to Europe or to, another foreign country. That just didn't happen back in the 60s. But right around then, mid-60s and then on, all of a sudden everyone started doing it. And by the 70s and 80s, it wasn't even special anymore. It was just pretty much everyone flew everywhere, and it was pretty affordable. And by the 90s and then now today, if I wanted, I could fly to Paris tonight and spend the weekend there and fly home on Monday if I wanted to, and it wouldn't be that expensive. Flying is no longer special. It's no longer that expensive. Almost everyone now that I know in my life has flown everywhere, has flown a million different places over their lifetimes. I mean, it changed life so completely, but it also made it easier for families to move away, for people to get jobs in other states, other countries, and for the bonds that held families together, they just kind of broke apart. And a lot of the reason, I think, was because of the convenience and affordability and ease of traveling anywhere and everywhere for business. I think a lot of people have thought, well, we can move across the country and live on the other side of the country, and we'll just come back, we'll fly back to visit our family for the holidays or for vacations. So a couple times a year we can fly back and visit, instead of, back when I was growing up, pretty much most family members lived close to other family members. All of my family members, we had a huge family, hundreds of aunts and uncles and cousins and nephews and nieces and brothers and sisters. And I mean, we had a huge family, and everyone lived in the same area, and we all visited each other on a regular basis. So that all changed dramatically. Number 6 goes back to maybe flying a little bit, but also the internet and cell phone and social media. It's made it possible for almost all of us. Now, I'm retired now, so it doesn't apply to me anymore, but almost everyone now can work almost anywhere in the world they want. And I see that a lot. We watch House Hunters, it's one of our favorite TV shows, and I would say almost 9 out of 10 episodes, especially the House Hunters International, are people who are still working, and they move to a foreign country because they can work from home. Sometimes they'll get a job in another country, but much of the time they're still working here in the US, if this is where they originally lived, and they're living in Australia, or they're living in Europe or Asia or wherever, and they're just working from home because you can do that now. In the 60s, when I was growing up, nobody worked from home. I didn't know a single person who worked from home. Never even heard of that. And that was the other thing we joke about when we're watching House Hunters. Not one person who's looking for a house is ever not looking for a home office. Most people want a home gym, a home office, maybe a movie theater, all kinds of things that we never had when we were growing up. You just had bedrooms, and nobody had a home office that I know of. And now almost everybody has a home office. Even if you're retired, you want a home office because of your computers and all of your things that you do now that require or are helped by having an office. So that's definitely a positive, though, especially because prices have skyrocketed in certain areas like Los Angeles. I grew up in the Los Angeles area, where the average price of a dinky one-bedroom, one-bathroom condo in a nice area is probably over $1 million now. So it's unaffordable. California is unaffordable for almost everybody. Almost nobody can afford to live in California anymore, especially closer to the beach areas, the nicer areas where most people want to live. Just completely unaffordable. But you can still have a job in Los Angeles, but you might be working from Ireland or Italy or South America, Indonesia. Thailand is very popular, is a very popular place to live now because it's so affordable. And a lot of people, I'm sure, are living in Thailand, and they still have jobs in Los Angeles or New York or other large cities, and they're just working from home because it doesn't matter anymore. Now you have to, the time difference is, I'm sure, weird, so you're probably working at night when everyone here is awake during the day, so you have to get used to that. But just the ability to be able to work anywhere in the world now from home, that didn't exist when I was growing up. Maybe for a couple of people, but not for the average family. So that's, I think, a huge plus. And number 7 kind of goes along with that, in that you never really have to leave your house if you don't want to. Not only can you work from home, but you never have to leave your house for groceries or anything. Pretty much everything on the planet can be delivered to you, and most of the time for free. And most of the time the same day or the next day. So that's a huge plus. We did have the milkman and the paper boy and the bakery guy, the bakery truck that would come and deliver things back in the old days, back in the 60s when we were growing up. So we did have some delivery, but not like today, where you can just go online, order anything you want from anywhere in the world, and have it delivered to your house, to your doorstep. But having UPS and FedEx and Amazon and Uber Eats and Instacart and all of the other places that deliver pretty much everything to you has definitely improved life, I think, for almost everyone. Because a lot of people, especially retirees, a lot of retirees are not able to drive anymore. Maybe they can't afford to have a car, or they're not able to drive, they're not mobile anymore, so they can have things delivered. So for every group of people, I think delivery can be a huge bonus that we just didn't have back in the old days. I think maybe back in the old days, retirees who didn't drive or couldn't get out to buy their own groceries had to rely on friends and family to bring groceries and things to them. So number 8 is actually, it's a plus, but it's also something I've complained about for years now. I think I started noticing it back in the 1980s, where when I was growing up, if you wanted like to send someone a birthday card, you would go to the store and there'd be, a dozen birthday cards. Well, then by the 1980s, there were stores that were just greeting card stores in the malls, and you'd have like thousands of cards on every topic. And I just remember it just seemed so overwhelming because there were so many choices, so many options. And then you started seeing that with everything, with food, with cars, with drinks, with everything. Everything just, there's like a dozen options for everything these days, which I guess it's a plus. For me, it's more of a minus. I kind of preferred the old days when, well, I was going to make a video about this. Maybe I still will, because I know not everyone watches every video, and not everyone watching this video is going to make it this far. So a video I was going to talk about was like a good example of Spam. When I was a kid, there was you buy a can of Spam. It came in one flavor. It was just Spam. Well, now when I go to the grocery store, there's a whole wall of Spam in a dozen different flavors. It's like, my thought is like, who needs that many different flavors of Spam? But it's not just Spam, it's everything. I noticed that with macaroni and cheese. Growing up, we had macaroni and cheese, Kraft macaroni and cheese, and I think that was the only option. Well, now you've got like a dozen to 2 dozen different types of macaroni and cheese, different companies, different types, different flavors, different, pre-done, just the old-fashioned kind, frozen kind. It's just crazy how many options we have when it comes to everything. And I think that is a plus. For me, I find it irritating because I just like to keep it real simple and basic. I don't really need all those options. I'm not really into all those options, but I think for most people, obviously most people do like all those options when it comes to different soft drinks or potato chips. There's like 500 different types of potato chips now. It's just insane. But overall, I do think that's probably a plus for most people. Number 9 is air quality. Now, I grew up in the Los Angeles area, about 20 miles from downtown LA back in the 1960s, and I can tell you, well, if you grew up in a big city like Los Angeles, smog was so thick. How we survived, how we all didn't die from cancer, lung cancer, I don't know, and I'm sure a lot of us did. Makes me cough just to think about it. It was so bad that a lot of times we couldn't have recess because the smog alerts the smog was so thick and so bad. They had these smog alerts where the teachers wouldn't let the kids out for exercising because it was just too hazardous to your health to exercise. And so you couldn't go out because it was just too smoggy. And if you've ever been to LA, it's like mostly surrounded by beautiful, beautiful mountains with snow-capped mountains off in the distance. Well, much of the time, especially in the summer, it would be so smoggy you couldn't even see the mountains. Sometimes you couldn't even see like half a mile from wherever you lived. All you saw was brown skies. So I grew up in a decade, even though I love the 60s and I remember it very fondly and all the good things about it, I had forgotten, and I guess you try to put the bad things out of your mind. But I remember that smog my lungs hurt my entire childhood. Now I also have allergies, so I also had that to deal with. So allergies and asthma and smog, and yeah, it was horrible. So just breathing back then was a real challenge for just about everybody. Today, in the Los Angeles area, and I think most major cities in the country, I don't know about the rest of the world, but because of all of the regulations that were put into place to regulate auto emissions, it did raise the price of a lot of things. Here in California, we pay almost twice as much as the rest of the country for gas because a lot of that money goes into, I think, regulating auto emissions to keep smog at a minimum. And it's just nothing at all like it was back in the 60s. When I drive up to LA now, I rarely ever see any smog, ever, even in the middle of summer. Just beautiful blue skies, beautiful mountains. Once in a while, you might see kind of a little bit of a smoggy day, but nothing at all like when I was a kid. So that's been a huge improvement. Electric vehicles have really helped probably a lot, I think, in that area to cut down on emissions, and just all of the other regulations, not just with cars, but with businesses. Over time, Even though we all hate rules and regulations, they really can improve our health a lot. And it really has improved our health, our breathing health, tremendously over the years. So that's been a huge, huge plus. And number 10 ties into number 9. Back when I was growing up, it seemed like every man, woman, and child smoked. I mean, I'm kind of joking, although not really. I mean, even as young kids, 10, 11, 12 years old, most of my friends smoked. Everybody smoked. People smoked in the movie theaters. Do you remember going to a walk-in movie theater and it was just full of smoke? Everybody was smoking. My grandfather smoked. Everybody smoked at home. Every home that I went to was full of smoke. Doctors smoked. You go to a doctor's office and the doctor would be there smoking. So it was a very unhealthy time when it came to smoking. Everybody smoked. At that time, people didn't realize how dangerous it could be to your health and to your life. And even celebrities, many of the biggest celebrities of the day were smokers, and they promoted smoking in advertisements. Many of them died from lung cancer as a result of their smoking. So it was just a time where people didn't realize just how dangerous it was. I think maybe the companies knew how dangerous it was, but making money outweighed the danger. And so it took, again, the government, rules, regulations, and laws to finally outlaw smoking almost everywhere. So today, I'm shocked whenever I see anyone smoking. Like, I don't know if I shared the video. I think I shared a video just recently. I was walking downtown Palm Springs and there was someone sitting there smoking, and I just looked at her. Now, she looked like she could have been from another country, so maybe she was here on vacation. This is a vacation destination, so I'm guessing that she was probably visiting from another country, and in their country they still smoke. I do remember back in the 1990s when I went to Paris and London and Rome and toured Europe, it did seem like everybody smoked. And it reminded me, it was like a flashback to the 1950s and 60s when I was growing up. I had forgotten just how much the US had changed. Now also, when I took my road trip back to the East Coast and the South a few years ago, I noticed back in the South and the East Coast, people smoke a lot more than they do on the West Coast, especially California. So I guess it depends on where you live, but here in California, I'm shocked whenever I see anyone smoking. I mean, just people don't smoke here anymore. Where back in the day, everybody smoked. It was almost required that everyone smoke. I don't remember if our teachers smoked, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if our teachers teaching class were up at the front of the class smoking a cigarette. It was just, that's how common it was back in the 50s and 60s, and how acceptable it was until, I think it was around the 70s, 1970s, late 60s, 70s, when they started posting the cancer warning on the side of cigarettes, and then they, little by little, it started becoming very socially unacceptable to smoke, to the point where you were like a pariah if you smoked. I remember being very surprised. Like I mentioned earlier, we're big fans of, well, maybe it was another video. We're big fans of Big Brother, and I remember the first few seasons of Big Brother, they were smoking. A lot of the contestants on that show, a lot of the cast members, they would go out, they didn't smoke in the house, I don't think. They would go out into the backyard, into the yard, and they would smoke. There'd be 2, 3, 4, 5 of them smoking. And I remember thinking, gosh, was this in the 2000s? I was really surprised. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if this was maybe in the 70s or 80s, maybe even 90s, but this was already in the 2000s, and they were smoking on TV, and you rarely see that in reality shows or comedies. I still see it a lot in movies and TV shows. In fact, it's really hard for me to watch shows, newer shows, where people are smoking. I don't want to watch people smoking. I can't believe they're still getting away with showing people smoking in movies and TV shows, but I think a lot of these are probably sold to an international market, and internationally people still smoke, I think, probably a lot more than here in the US. But anyway, here in the US at least, and here in California, that's been a huge improvement. Almost no one smokes anymore. At least in my life, I rarely ever see anybody smoking. And that makes me very happy. That's a huge, huge plus as far as I'm concerned. So what do you think? Do you agree with me? Are these like the top 10 things that are actually better today than they were back in the old days? Did I miss any? If so, let me know in the comments. I'm sure there must be more than 10 things that are better today than they were back when we were growing up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So as always, Thanks for sharing the memories, everybody, and I hope to see you all in the next video. And I look forward to reading all your comments.